Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Socratic Satsang. Our topic for today is unstoppable, the mindset to overcome obstacles and achieve your dream. Our first speaker for today is Kirsten Nair.
So we all carry dreams within us, and the road toward them is often lined with obstacles. The question isn't whether challenges will come, but how we meet them when they arrive. And when we encounter setbacks, the instinct is often frustration, maybe even self doubt. But another way to see setbacks is to look through the lens of what can I learn here? What is life teaching me or asking of me? Disappointment, even failure, is often a preparation, a time of muscle building. We need to experience resistance to improve strength. And sometimes when a goal is particularly large or meaningful, we need to have those muscles in order for it to be sustainable. I think of people who win the lottery only to be broke within a matter of years. And on the surface, it can look like mismanagement, but on a deeper level, there's a significant psychological component. If the habits, skills, and mindset that support long term flourishing isn't in place, then external rewards can slip away as quickly as they arrive. I think when our psychology is aimed more toward process and not just the prize, what we gain can be held, integrated, and even multiplied. Effort doesn't just produce results, it builds the capacity to carry those results. And in that sense, the value is not just in what we achieve, but what we become in the act of achieving. A core component of this idea is self efficacy, the simple but profound belief that I am capable, not that the path will be easy or the outcome certain, but that I can engage, I can persist, I can influence my future. And this isn't just positive thinking. We obviously have to act on those thoughts. And I think of James Clear in Atomic Habits. He states, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." So it's not the size of the ambition that determines whether or not we succeed, but the structure of the habits that carry us there. Goals give us direction, but systems, those small choices and daily disciplines, are what sustain us. And all of this unfolds not in these grand gestures, but in the small daily actions that we take, the way we speak to ourselves, the habits we choose, the practices we return to when no one is watching. So I would see excellence not as an event, but as a practice, a way of living, the daily choices that shape who we're becoming. That's all for now.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Drake, over to you, brother.
Yeah, I think in order to achieve our goals, and we need to start off by believing in ourselves and um, expecting that there will be failures along the way, but being able to persevere through those failures and to take those failures and learn from them. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Um, there's a common saying that it takes about 10,000 hours of doing anything to become an expert in that field. And look at anyone, whether it's someone in sports or an artist of some type or someone good in business, and realize that there is no real such thing as an overnight success. You hear people saying that, yeah, they're a 10-year overnight success because you don't see all those things going on behind. And if you're thinking of it that way and you have a belief in yourself that you can do it, confidence, and you take from those failures, even if there's something you can't control, you can say, okay, I did it this way and failed. Now I've learned something. I know that that's not the way to do it, and I'll try something else. And don't let those failures get you down, because that's what can happen. People tend to dwell on their failures and feel bad about them, but use them as that learning experience and the springboard to move forward and to persevere through it. And a lot of times it won't be easy, but if you realize that you're gaining something out of it, even if you aren't moving forward as quickly as you think, you'll eventually get to that point where you're much better. Um, for me, when I started out with photography, um, I was just having fun taking pictures, but they were nothing really to look at. They were snapshots, right? And the more time I put in, the more practice I put in, the more I start liking what I'm getting. Um, I still have ways to go before I'll be happy, and probably will never be fully happy with what I've got, what I'm doing, because there's always somewhere further you can push yourself. But that's the thing, it is little bit at a time. If you can add those things up, you'll get to a place that maybe you had big dreams at one point and had a hard time conceiving that you would actually get there. Um, but they build up, and keep that faith in yourself, and don't let the negative things get you down, and you're going to make progress. So I'll pass it over now.
Thank you, Drake. Thank you, Kirsten. Both were hugely insightful. So, Tulip and then Denise, please.
So, to achieve goals, we of course need clarity, we need plan of action, um, avoid negativity, don't give into feelings, because that's something that, the same thought, the same plan can change just because of how we feel. Surround ourselves with, people who lift you. So these are the points that's coming to my head, but more than that, what's important is to be realistic and to be practical, because we work or we think we'll achieve things, but it's important to have that reality check. And because that could really backfire and get you to a place that you probably don't want to be in.
Just thank you. Denise, over to you.
Um, yeah, I really actually resonated with a lot of what Drake just said, and Tulip, I completely agree that people can put themselves into a state of delusion almost if there's not some form of reality there. As I mentioned, a lot of what Drake said really resonated with me, because I have down things like confidence, right, and being able to have that in yourself, and that sometimes doesn't come in young adulthood or even middle adulthood. And I'm not saying you need to be older to have those insights, but sometimes experience can really make a difference. We learn from our challenges and our failures. You hear all the time about famous people, because, of course, or even just friends or family that have tried and failed over and over and over again at different projects or different things that they want to accomplish in life. And they keep going and going because they have this drive, or it's something that really makes them happy. And they keep doing it and trying new things. I certainly am in that boat. I'm not famous, but I've been trying to and slowly achieving success in creating meditation business. And I'm trying different things, learning things about myself, things I like doing, things I don't like doing. For example, building a website. I don't like doing that. So I've discovered, but I finished it and I did it because it's a means to an end for me. And the conditioning, one thing that really stands out when I talk to people about their careers, and I've been a mentor in the past, um, is we are so stuck with that conditioning in this world. Now, it could come from society, it could come from family, it could come from different cultures, have different ways of seeing how they would like to see their child succeed. And so when we go into that stage of limiting beliefs, and we're not showing our true potential because the belief is that we have to be this way, or we have to do this to make money, or whatever the case may be, and we're not following what's in our heart. And fair enough, I've been in the financial industry my whole life, so I get it. I get that you have people have bills to pay for and so forth. um, but somewhere in there, there's got to be a level of enjoyment of life. And Dr. Joe Dispenza is somebody who I really enjoy reading his books, and I actually quoted him a few times in my dissertation for my PhD in metaphysical sciences, because his books talk a lot, and there's a lot of research behind what he does. But he has one book called Supernatural, and we all have the ability, if we can retrain our brains away from that conditioning, to be able to go beyond what we believe or what we perceive to be our limits. So there's just so much that we're capable of as human beings, that you can achieve your dreams if you have that unstoppable mindset. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Denise. Paulina, your hand was up.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. So I'm a little inspired by what both Tulip and Denise said, and so two things. First of all, I have some problem with the concept that everybody has to have a dream and that we have to follow this dream, because when people are not able to conceive a dream, and when people have limitations, like women for so long have had too many limitations. Even if they had a dream, they couldn't do it. Poverty can be a limiting factor. There's a lot of reasons. The way we are brought up can also be a limiting factor. So when society tells us that we have to have a dream and fulfill it, and we don't, there's a problem with that. I have a bit of a issue with that. Having said so, I think it's not a bad thing to have a dream if the dream is in you and if that's the kind of person you are, and if you're in the position to do it. So for me to be a dream, it has to come from a place completely and absolutely completely detached from your ego. So your ego is basically what society tells you you need to do, or what you think you need to do in order to feel more important or have more money or have whatever it is. But it may be ignoring the inside. I'm just going to be a bit cheesy, flame. Because I think in order to achieve your dream, you need to have a huge amount of drive, and you have to have a very strong clarity on what dream is, because it's clarity that drives you to that goal. It's not the steps that you put towards that goal, because the steps, if I'm going to be, I'm going to say steps are good if you're making a dinner, or if you're making a planning for a getaway or something like that. But when you have a dream, if you don't follow those steps, because life will always get into your way, the steps can actually be a setback. Well, I didn't do this or I didn't do that. So maybe your inner flame can be a little bit extinguished or you know. So I find it's better to have an idea of. I'm just going to give you an example. When I was younger, I felt that I needed to leave my country. I didn't know where. I had no idea. There was no plan. But by having that specific goal in my head, whenever the opportunity for me came that I can make that goal happen, I recognized the opportunity, so I took it. But there wasn't a specific planning for that. Now, I'm not saying that planning is necessarily bad, but I feel that when you have a very loved goal or a very loved dream, having that clarity will guide your life to get there. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. I can go next. I think human beings are ambitious by nature, and we, we tend to always want something more than what we have. You initially want a bike, then you want a better bike, then you want a car, you want a better car, or you want a condo, then you want a house. It doesn't seem to end. It's just part of us. And here's what I think will help in whatever you have or whatever you want to achieve. So I don't think it's bad to be ambitious. I think it's quite good to be ambitious, and it's normal to be ambitious. But if you're building a structure, say you're constructing a building, you cannot start at the second or third floor. You've got to first start with the foundation. And I agree with what everyone has said so far. I agree with what Drake said. I agree with Kirsten, as in your habits will form you. So here's what I think. First of all, be extremely clear on your values. What are your values? What do you value in life? What is it what, and because that'll help you with your priorities, it'll help you with your decision making. So first set your values in place. After you've set your values, then you set your goals. You don't do it the other way around, because if you do it the other way around, your goals can conflict with your values, and you could wind up being a frustrated person. So first set your values, then set your goals. In your goals, it helps if you can prioritize your goals so that you know which one you want to get and how badly you want to get it, what kind of work you're willing to put into that. Once you've got your goals in place, then like Drake said, it takes 10,000 hours before you can call yourself proficient in something. And like Kirsten said, it's your habits that will make you who you are. Most of us today are the result of what we've done in the last 2 years. So where you want to be 2 years from now, you start building towards that today. And how do you build towards that? You build towards that with your thoughts, your words, and your actions. If your thoughts, your words, and actions are not aligned and not heading towards those goals, and those goals have to be compliant with your values, then you can start getting there. There was this question that used to be asked quite a lot in companies when I used to conduct corporate training. And that question was, do you want to be a small fish in a big pond that's an employee in a very large company? Or do you want to be a big fish in a small pond that's an employee with more value in a smaller company? And there was no real right or wrong answer. It was more dependent on what you wanted. And then I watched a Tom Cruise interview where he was asked the same question. Do you want to be a character in a big movie, or do you want to be a main character in a smaller movie? And his reply was mind blowing. His reply was, I want to be the biggest character in the biggest movie. And he got there. He's got there because he's put in the work, he's shown the dedication, his words, his thoughts, his actions are all aligned. One of the things that helps us get to the goals is being able to focus on those goals and work our way through it. I remember this, I was doing an obstacle course, and part of the obstacle course was a 9-foot ditch, which we had to jump over. And I was pretty good at the obstacles, except that 9-foot ditch. Every time I reached it, I would just land up in the ditch, or I would stop at the entrance because I knew I was about to go in. Tried many times, couldn't get across. And then one of my cohorts was just sitting and watching me practice and go into the ditch again and again. And he had a smile on his face. And I asked him, I said, tell me, how do I do this? Because he was doing it easily. And he said, the mistake you are making is that as you're running towards the ditch, you're looking inside the ditch. Don't look down into the ditch. Look at where you want to land. And when he said that, it seemed too simple. It didn't seem to make much sense to me, but I tried it anyways. And the tough thing to do was don't look down into the ditch, but look straight up at where you want to land. It took some refocusing, but then the ditch was nothing after that. It was that easy. Another experience I've had is we have these walls around us. We can see them, we can feel them, we can touch them, and therefore we don't try to walk through walls. Similarly, we all have walls in our mind, and these walls are built with years of conditioning, and we don't even try to break through or walk through the walls. But in our minds, if we really set our mindset, make a bulletproof mindset, you can walk right through walls. I've heard of people talk about visualization technique. You visualize something and it helps. I think it's much deeper than that. I think it's more of internalization, it's more of ownership, it's more of genuinely being there in thoughts, words, actions, competence. Put in the work and you'll get there. The reason I was mentioning values as being important, more important than goals, is because in your journey towards your goals or even your intermediate goals, you're sometimes faced with decisions that will, where you'd have to choose between compromising on your ethics or compromising on people who you really value. And you might, because of the hunger to get that goal, we may make that compromise at that point of time and get the goal. But then you don't feel the success and it eats into you. And once it eats into you, you start going into habits like alcoholism or escapism, and you're high on achieving your goals, but it's eating you from inside. We have to be self aware. What are my strengths? What are the areas I need to work on? And then get to work on them. Thank you. Over to you, Leon.
Sure. Thank you, Vin. And that was excellent stuff. So I'd like to add what you were saying. So what was mentioned before is the idea that we naturally have drive and goals and ambition. And an interesting psychological phenomenon that's been observed for decades now is the hedonic treadmill. And it basically shows that anytime when we achieve something, we tend to have a period when our mood is elevated. But after some time, we get used to it and then it's back to like a new normal in that sense. So what we've been observing in the modern world is that a lot of people achieve things in their career or in finances and so on and so forth, but they still feel like there's something missing in their lives. And that's pretty much what's reflected in the hedonic treadmill. But the thing is that it goes to our nature as human beings, because and Dostoevsky explored this in Notes of Underground, where the underground man was saying that as human beings, we tend to fall in love more with the journey than the goal itself. And it kind of makes sense because you typically always, when you look back at like TV shows that you love or movies or books, we tend to talk about the events within what we consume, but we care about the ending, but anytime when we reflect back into it, it's always the journey, the process that the characters go into it. And then looking back at human history, since we're talking about obstacles, like the human species has faced a lot of obstacles. Like we started as species in Africa, yet we somehow managed to migrate all around the world. Like looking back at cause I saw this map of human migration patterns, and they did things that I would be terrified of doing. To be able to go out into the middle of nowhere in canoes, that taken just to migrate from one part of the continent to another, to be able to cross savannas, to cross wilderness, to cross the forest, which makes sense that in a lot of mythological motifs, that's typically a common setting, whether it be a forest or the wilderness, the desert, or water, the ocean, because that represents the unknown in that sense. And to tie back to the concept of the unknown, that's pretty much obstacles, because we tend to have goals, but the thing is that our choices manifest themselves in a way that we can't foresee. And Kierkegaard pretty much explored that concept in Anxiety. And what he means by anxiety is the existential aspects of it too, but also the fact that we can't anticipate what can happen to us in life. And because of the consequence of our freedoms with facing uncertainty, it can hold us back, and the consequence of it holding us back leads to despair. Hence why Kierkegaard proposed, and you actually touched on that, Vin, the concept of the leap of faith ties back to Kierkegaard. He was saying in order to overcome, or in order to, the necessary action to deal with our dilemma is to take what he called the leap. In other words, a passionate belief in yourself to achieve, despite the unknown, crossing over, or the passionate belief despite uncertainty in order to achieve your goal. Hence the example that you gave with the ditch. So I was like, that was a perfect illustration of that. And the thing is too, looking back at human migration patterns and so on, right? What's a common thing that we see, right? Is stories. In a lot of myth stories or so on and so forth, there's always this idea of the journey of the characters itself. And that pretty much reflects the human experience in one way, shape, or form. So I think about the story of Hercules, for example, or the stories in the Iliad. The characters themselves, they face obstacles, but they had to be willing to face it. And in the story of Hercules, or Heracles in the Roman version, each labor, because Heracles faces 12 labors, and each labor prepares him for the next one, in that sense. And the thing is, when you're dealing with challenges and obstacles, in order to deal with them, you need what we call, and we touched on that before, values. Our values guide our actions, or our actions, the way how we deal with the issues and problems in life, in one way, shape, or form, are guided by what we value. And our virtues also the virtues that we value also help to guide that. So one thing I love that Aristotle said is that you become builders by building houses, a harper becomes a harpist by playing the harp, and the courageous become courageous by performing acts of courage. So it's that continual practice, and we've touched on that before, and it can be something small. It could be something small that we can do in our day-to-day lives that can build up eventually to something greater. So in a sense, it's kind of like in our everyday life, you can prepare yourself to pretty much face the challenges that we can deal with in life in one way, shape, or form. But there's one thing that I think that we should mention too, and I think is lacking in our world today. So in this book, Heroes, Myths, and Legends, I forgot the author's name, but he's a part of one of the institutes. He was saying that, and I believe his arguments, that the roles that the stories play were that the heroes in them, or the characters in them, actually show the values and the virtues personified. And the thing is too that we know that we tie very well to stories. They activate our mirror neurons, they activate empathy waves, so on and so forth. But the thing is that we tend to want to embody something because the characters are real life, or even if it's fictional, they're examples that we can convey. So one thing that's interesting to note is that Alexander the Great actually knew the Iliad entirely by heart, which is kind of crazy because if you see the Iliad, that book is very thick, and he memorized it by heart because he believed that, and if I'm not mistaken, Achilles was actually his hero. And anytime when he would go into battle, he tried to emulate the bravery in the Iliad and in the other Greek stories. Another thing to note is that it was actually common practice in ancient Greece that when soldiers would return from battle, they would actually, as a group, recite passages from the Iliad together. And it was a way for them to kind of get back into the world, to prepare themselves, and also to remember that the experience that they went through, the characters in the story also went through that. And if you read enough novels and stories, you tend to realize that a lot of the experiences and problems that we deal with, other people have dealt with them before in the past, oftentimes it tends to hold people down, and it's held me down before, is that when you face an issue, you think, this is only happening to me. Like, I'm the only person that this is happening to. But when you actually read accounts, then you realize, no, this is something that people all through history have dealt with. So hence the author proposed this hero worship. And it's not, of course, not to worship the hero like a god. No, what he means by that is that a good practice to do is to look at the heroes or the people that we admire, whether it be fictional or in nonfiction, and then figure out what is it in these people that we admire about them, whether it be their characteristics, their virtues, what they accomplished. Understand their story. In one way, shape, or form, we all have stories. I have a story, you have a story, and we all read about stories and they're written about. And then our brains would actually try to emulate that in one way, shape, or form. And when you have those real life examples in our lives, then we can actually help to emulate that, as we can see in the examples of like the Greek stories of even with Alexander the Great trying to emulate the heroes of the stories itself.
Thank you, Leon. That was awesome. That was super. Thank you so much. Paulina, over to you.
Yes. There's something that you said that really helped me clarify my own concept of what I was trying to express a moment ago. So the ditch and reaching to the top, that's exactly how I see goals, or not goals, or dreams. So when you were trying to reach to the top, my belief is that you were focused on the ditch and maybe trying to find steps how to overcome that. So the minute that you switched from the ditch and maybe the steps to run over that to actually the top, just your goal, your own body, your own creativity, well, you ask somebody else. So that's what I'm talking about. When you have a dream, when you have something that you feel so deeply inside, if you're so focused on that, you will have a natural adaptability to resolve the problems, which will take you in other ways. Sometimes looking at the problems alone or at what I wrote down as my goals can limit yourself. And that's what I was talking about. Now, I'm not saying that goals are not important, and I'm not saying that goals shouldn't be regarded. In fact, I believe one of the strategies, the most important strategy, is that follow-up and that constancy and just the focus. The focus can take you and give you that drive. But at the same time, your main focus should not be on the goals, but on your dream, because we will always have interruptions in life. There's sickness, there's loss of a job, loss of a person in your life. There's so many things that can come to your life. So when you have that flame, as I was calling it, you are able to navigate through that if you are focused primarily on your dream. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise, over to you.
So just backing on what everyone is sharing, we're always evolving as human beings. So I find when I think of my own experience through my life that revisiting who I am, what I value, who inspires me, what inspires me on a regular basis, and really revisiting that and kind of refashioning my goals and my dreams and so forth according to who I am as time goes on, because I'm certainly not the same person I was, whether it be 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Obviously, I can go longer. And then, I can't help but think of, I teach mindfulness all the time. And Eckhart Tolle, of course, is like the king of, living in the moment. And that has really helped me as well. I've been through a lot of challenges in my life, whether it be through managing as a single mother with my severely autistic daughter. I could name a few things, health concerns, etc. But I find that if I'm not attached, if I don't have attachment to the past, or try and work on not having that attachment, and focus on the now. So not pushing myself into the future too much, where that creates anxiety, and not focusing on the past, where that can be very depressing, if you will. But trying to stay in the moment and trying to let go of some of those stories. Now, I'm not talking about the stories that Leon was sharing. I'm not talking about where we can reference characters and draw inspiration. I'm talking about the stories that we tell ourselves. Oh, I went through such a horrible divorce, and 5 years later, it really depleted. Like, it's very easy to get into that mindset and to stick with those stories, and to me, that creates those limiting beliefs and changes who you are. And so focusing on the moment, practicing mindfulness, being grateful. I know I've mentioned that in previous podcasts as well, but gratitude is a real wonderful way to be able to stay present and create that kind of unstoppable mindset, if you will, where, the past, does it matter? Of course it still matters. You experienced it. But maybe trying to let go of some of that fear and trauma, and not to focus too much on what's ahead. But, and actually Leon said something interesting, falling in love with the journey versus, the goal. That's really, easy to do, right? So if there's a nice balance between that, that's great. But drawing inspiration from the present moment and being grateful for what we have in that moment, is, to me, I think that's something that really sticks with me and has certainly helped me overcome many of my challenges over the years.
Thank you, Denise. That was superb. I completely agree with you on the gratitude part. And something I learned from the army there was this general who once told me, he said, "Be happy, don't be content." And those were powerful words that stayed with me a long time. Adding to what Drake said earlier, believe in yourself, but stay humble. Thank you. Yes, Drake.
And just adding to what I was saying earlier, how there's always obstacles out there, and we need to overcome them in some way or learn from them. Some of them we can't do much about. A lot of them that are out there, we can't do much about. So we have to adapt and adjust to them, and maybe shift our goals around. Still working towards our ultimate goal. But the biggest one that we can often do something about, the biggest impediment to things, is our own mind. Because we'll get it in our mind that we can't jump that ditch or whatever it may be. And um, we just won't be able to see past that, and we'll get into that mindset where we can't do it and get stuck there. um, but that's where the thinking positive about yourself and learning from all these other things comes in. um, for your example with jumping over that ditch, somebody else was doing it, they had no problem, and they told you what you needed to hear to help you over it. And that's the way, once you knew that in your mind and followed through, you were able to accomplish what your goal was there. And I've had issues where um, I had a foot problem followed up by a back problem here, and I could have let that get me down. I had a physical test coming up at work that we have to do every year and pass. And I could have let that down, saying there's no way with the pain in my back and foot that I'm going to be able to do this. But I put in the time. I knew I set goals for myself as far as going to physio and getting other chiropractic help in that. And through that, I got past some of these issues. There's still pain there, but talking to my medical practitioners, the pain that's there, by doing these things, I'm not going to make myself worse. I can go ahead and do these things. So that gave me the confidence to say I can push through. And when it came time recently to do that physical test, I aced it because it was no longer a concern of mine that I'm going to make myself worse and I got to hold back. And that, no, I was able to use that positive thinking and reach that goal I had. So I think there's always a way, as long as we can overcome our own inhibitions that are in our mind and look for other ways to do it. Could I have done it on my own without the help from the different medical professionals and seeking that out? It would have been much harder, and I don't know, but um, I used my own mind to think, what is the best route? What options are there now that I've had these setbacks? And I think we can all do that to some degree, no matter what situation we're in. You could be somebody on the street that just has a tiny goal of being able to find better shelter, and that you can work towards that. Or you could be someone who's in a luxury position and have a goal of something greater. Um, but we all can work towards improving lives for ourselves and reaching goals, whatever they might be. Thanks.
Thank you. Over to you, Tulip.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said. And of course, Vin's famous ditch and the wall. I just love those stories. Adding to what everyone has said, I also believe that if you really want to do or achieve something from all your heart, you will do it. And if you don't want to do something, you will make excuses and blame the world for everything.
Thank you, Tulip. Yes, Denise.
Just backing on to what Drake was saying, and I think I've shared something like this in a previous podcast, but this really hits home right now, especially, like I said, but backing on what Drake was saying about what we can do for ourselves. So, just under 2 years ago, I lost my eyesight because of being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes that I had for about 10 to 15 years without knowledge. Never went for blood tests, felt great all the time. You don't need to go see a doctor for blood work when you feel good, right? And so, anyway, one day, after a week of headaches, lost my vision. Diabetes. My A1C is at like 13, and my doctor's freaking out. And oh, you're going to be on this medication, that medication. She was so negative, and I thought, oh my gosh. So I just did a 180. It was a lot of work to turn my life around. More active, eating better, different schedule, better sleep, more like you name it. I did everything I could to help myself because it was in my power. I had the ability. Now, when I say that, obviously, my best friend became ChatGPT, and I did refer to, professionals like the Mayo Clinic and so forth. So it wasn't just Denise figuring it all out on her own, and now I'm a doctor and now I know everything. Absolutely not. However, what I've done in 2 years is be able to take that A1C and cut it in more than half. And I did that actually within the first year, never mind in 2 years. But I'm proof in my own mind that I have the ability to do things, even though people have said to me, no, you're going to be sick now for the rest of your life. You may or may not get your eyesight back. Like it was just, it was very upsetting at the time, but I decided to do something about it to make a difference because it mattered to me. And it's, I'm the way I see it, it's like when you get on an airplane, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first before, you try and help someone else. So that's kind of what I did. put my oxygen mask on first because there's people that rely on me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Denise. I'd just like to add that I've watched Denise, Tulip, Drake personally over the last few years, and I'm inspired by each one of you on how you've turned things around because I'm aware of some of the things you're talking about, and just wow to all three of you. Really, just wow. Thank you. Paulina, you're next.
Yeah, I love what Tulip said. So when you want to do something and we actually really want to do it, you're unstoppable. No, nothing. I have experienced that all my life. Following on what Denise said, I have MS. MS is supposed to be the worst thing that can happen to anybody, right? Because you don't move. And ChatGPT, and actually 23 years ago when I had my first episode, that's when I started doing a lot of research. And I don't depend on doctors. I don't depend on anything. And that's because I have a drive to be alive. I have a drive to be with my daughters, my husband. The love that I have for them inspires me to continue looking for answers. I want to do it. So it's not a goal that's has to do with anything else other than my own drive. And the same happens when I do art and when I do things that I truly want to do. And when I'm having a really hard time following a goal or something, sometimes I go like, okay, is this something that I actually want to do or something that I think I ought to be doing? And most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, that's the answer. When I'm having a hard time getting that inner energy to follow up on a dream, quote unquote. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Leon would like to say something.
Oh, yes. Basically, just adding to what we've been talking about. Basically, hearing what everybody else has to say. Basically, it goes to the idea of the relationship that you have with yourself, and to add to what Denise was talking about. We have a relationship with others, and we also have the relationship with ourselves. And typically, when we face obstacles or difficulties or challenges, a big hurdle typically tends to be the self-doubt that we have. And a key aspect to overcoming that self-doubt is basically proving yourself to yourself. Because typically we have this idea, okay, like you're proving yourself to others, but you can also prove yourself to yourself by achieving small things gradually over time. And basically hearing the examples that Denise and Drake and Palia talks about is that when you face difficulties or uncertainties and challenges that might seem impossible, you build up that will to achieve that goal by basically doing small things that you just build up into a habit every single day that eventually builds to something greater. And from that, you build that self-confidence in order to achieve the greater goals that we want in any shape or form. I mean, like what Aristotle talks about is, especially in the Neomachian Ethics, is the idea that practicing something, it's not just enough to know what good is. It's also important to practice the good, and it can be small or big. And I struggled a lot with self-doubt in my own life, and one way that I doubted that was I decided to pursue a martial arts. I was a very passive person growing up, passive child, and then when I moved to Victoria, I didn't know anybody. I decided that I might as well pursue something that I never would conceive of doing, which was basically to pursuing jiu-jitsu. And from doing that for the past even couple of years now, that has helped to pretty much build a lot of my own confidence within myself. That and also seeing other people in my life. But basically this constant setbacks I had when I was practicing the martial art, and to be able to develop the will to overcome, also by building small habits, proving myself to myself. Eventually, it helped me in all aspects of my own life. And I could also see that too in the stories that we all shared, pretty much in that sense, how you can just build on something small and go greater.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you. This has been a beautiful discussion. It's been inspiring. Even though I mentioned Tulip, Drake, and Denise, I'm sure that every single one of us, those watching and those who are participating here, have gone through our own challenges and keep going through challenges. Every time you think your problems are over, life comes and knocks you off your feet. So keep inspiring and don't stop. Thank you and see you next time.